so far? Okay. Then the vision, the why. My dog has questions, but not relevant. To encourage the discovery of our heritage and culture. And again, that's a proposal for the committee to approve. Any comment or discussion on that? Okay. And then Joan basically, with Bill and I working together as well, you see a list of goals. So you have the 7 goals there, and I think those are pretty clear. You don't really need me to read through them. And I guess at that point, I would be happy to move that the committee accept the proposed mission statement, vision statement, and list of goals.
I have a comment regarding the goals. I had done research from a number of different museums looking what their goals were and kind of tried to modify them, thinking what might be helpful for us. But I'm thinking maybe we should have some discussion if there's any tweaking of words or anything we're missing, or whether they look okay as they are.
I'd appreciate if Dixie would just read them over, and if anybody has anything to do after each goal, they can bring it forward. Would that be all right? Just get my attention.
Sure.
Thanks, Dixie.
Okay, so number 1, activities reflect the new and dynamic direction of the museum.
Go ahead.
Okay. Number 2, connect with audiences beyond the physical site.
Anything to add there, anybody? Go ahead.
3, create exhibits that generate interest and awareness.
Any questions?
How do I do that? Love.
Okay. Go ahead, Dixie.
Number 4, increase the strength of the North Huron Museum brand.
There, Dixie Lee, I don't know what you're referring to by brand.
Joan, could you elaborate a bit on that?
Your branding is your identity.
Have we stated it? Have we stated it, Joan? Do we have it someplace? What is our brand statement?
There's not usually a brand statement. Your brand is kind of, I don't exactly know how you're known. Vicki, can you comment on that, or?
I mean, a brand is a brand. Like a brand is a brand. It's just a brand, and so it's just the.
I know what a brand is, but I usually think that you should have a way of describing or identifying or what your brand is.
Well, it's the North Museum. Like it's just that.
Is that enough?
You're consistent with saying the North Huron Museum. You just keep talking about the North Huron Museum, and eventually it becomes a brand and something that people recognize as a go-to place. Just like cowbell becomes a brand over time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Next.
Yeah. Any other questions? I think somebody had a question for Vicki there, but maybe I missed that. Oh, there wasn't? Okay. Everyone's okay then? Okay, we'll move on to the next one.
Number 5, seek out partnerships to share skills, resources, and ideas.
Super. That's good.
Any questions?
Yes, again, I'd like a little definition there. What are you thinking of when you're give an example of a partnership that you would seek out for skills, resources, or ideas? Give one example there.
Vicky, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, would Dixie Lee, would that be something like a partnership with another museum?
I think it could be, or it could be with any of the community groups, with the theaters
The Legion?
that we had talked about in our program and promotion
Okay.
package.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yep, that's it. I was there and I know what you're talking about. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dixie.
number 6, build support with funders, sponsors, and advocates to ensure long-term financial sustainability.
Questions? Okay, go ahead, Dixie.
And number 7, ensure sufficient staffing levels to maintain energy and support.
Any questions on that? Yes, go ahead, Doug.
That staffing, you're talking about staffing and volunteers, like considering volunteers as part of staffing? Okay, that's
Yes.
good. Yeah, that's good.
Mr. Chairman, I think it might, just further discussing what Doug brought forward, it might be a good idea to put both of them in there, staffing and volunteers.
Staffing and volunteers, okay? You have that?
Suggestion. It's just a suggestion.
It's probably not a good idea, Vicky, because because if council's wondering what that means and they think it means paid staffing and doesn't include volunteers, then it's probably wise to do what you said there, Vicky. So ensure sufficient staffing and volunteer levels.
Okay. Joan, you had.
I think it's good to make it clear, yes.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Lou.
I also think there's a concern there that would be a fluctuating kind of situation over, and I don't know whether that has to be put in there or that's just obvious.
What do you think, people?
I mean, it would depend on what's going on within the museum itself as to how much staffing and maintain energy and support is a questionable kind of thing. You would have to be ready to adjust that as you would need to, but maybe that's obvious.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, Lou, I think that's a given. Like, you got seasonality to stuff, and you don't want to get this too wordy either.
Okay, all right. That's a caution that I need to be told. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Dixie Lee on these 7 goals? Bill, did you give your hand up?
Yeah, could I also say that this is basically a beginning point? And I think once the board of directors, if it goes through, would then maybe revisit this as part of their preliminary meetings and so on.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Oh, sorry, Joan, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if anybody has any other goals that they think should be included.
Are there any other goals come to mind for any of you folks? Vicky, do you think that covers most things?
Yeah, I think it covers a variety of different things and really meets the purpose of what the museum would be about and what it's trying to achieve. Because ultimately, I mean, it's trying to preserve heritage, and your community, the history of your community and things, right? So I think it covers the goals of the group, though, and how they're going to do it. Or what the museum's going to try to do and provide to the community and how it will be done.
Thank you. Doug, you had your hand up there this is,
No, I'm just saying it looks great to me. I'm willing to make a motion to approve.
okay. Okay, Amanda, do you want to read the motion? Is that any other thing else? Any other discussion at all? Because I think it came forward that Dixie Lee wanted to make a motion here, right?
Dixie, can you repeat your motion? I didn't capture it all.
I was moving that the committee accept the mission and vision statements and the goals.
Now, that was kind of a revised document from the mission and vision statement that we had before, correct?
Well, what we had before, we thought was a vision statement, but we realize now that it's actually a mission statement, and we didn't have the vision and the goals previously. So, and I think, Amanda, I need to add, adopt the mission, vision, and goals and include it in the report to council.
Okay, so I'll read you back
Correct.
the motion that I kind of drafted and let me know if that's what you were thinking. So I have that the North Huron Museum Committee hereby accept the revised version of the vision, mission, and goals statement, and further that the document gets incorporated into the final presentation to council.
Yes, that sounds good, Amanda. Thanks.
Paul, you're muted.
If there's no comment, I get a mover.
I would say that Dixie Lee moved. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Amanda?
Okay. Bill Farnell,
Yes.
Betty Lou Cole,
Yes.
Dixie Lee Arbuckle,
Yes.
David Wall,
Yes.
Doug Kyvenhoven,
Yes.
Joan Vandermeer,
Yes.
and Paul Heffer.
Yes.
Perfect. So that carries 7-0.
So moving on, the next line, the economic impact statement, that was something that Dixie Lee and Lou developed, so I'll let them speak to that. Ask them to speak to that.
Yes. This is a revision of what was submitted and approved earlier in our deliberations. So I cleaned up a bit of the language and the format, and the main difference is that under item number 2, a couple of sentences regarding a museum in Manitoba were deleted, and item number 5 was added. This economic ripple effect continues when you look at the money museums bring to their communities. Every dollar of revenue created at a museum generates $2.20 in other areas of the economy. And that was from a 2019 source, as you can see.
Any further discussion on that? We'll just wait. Dixie's got another side question, phone call there, so just hold on just for half a sec.
Excuse me, Amanda. That's Verna on the phone and she can't get on.
Is she doing it by phone or laptop?
Verna, are you on your phone or laptop? Phone.
And she has to dial the numbers sent to her previously.
Did you dial the numbers that Amanda sent previously? Okay, tell me again.
One option is she could just drive over to the youth center and sit beside Bill there with the mask on. Would that work, Bill?
Sure, that's okay with me.
Say Dixie Lee. Because it might be a bit of a task.
Paul, at your office?
No, this is Doug at the youth center over at my office.
Okay, she says she can't go. She's babysitting a dog.
Okay, no, forget it. No.
Okay, hang on. Amanda, this is the number she used.
I'll email it to her again.
Oh, but okay. Amanda wants to email the number to you again. Doesn't have email. I guess, can you phone her?
I'm looking up the number, just 1 second.
Okay, Amanda's looking up the number. I almost didn't pick up, you know.
It's 1416.
Okay, just hang on. Wait. I'm listening to Amanda, okay? I'm gonna write this down. So, sorry, go ahead, Amanda.
1416-216-5643.
Can you do the last four numbers once more, please?
5643, and the
Got it.
access code
Okay,
is 132-412-3144.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, okay. And the access code then?
She'll need the password too, won't she, Amanda? There's a password 66784487.
It just tells me the access code.
Those were the numbers she used before that didn't work. So she's trying what we just discussed.
Then I don't know what the problem is because I'm reading off the numbers from WebEx. So she'll have to figure it a different way.
Oh, okay then. Can we move on then? I'm just wondering if Joan, do you want to give it, Joan?
Yes.
Thank you.
So everyone's okay with that the economic impact statement as it's revised? Do we need to?
Oh, do we need to vote on the amended piece?
Oh, on number 5 there, that's right. Right?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, oh, sorry, Becky. Yes.
sorry to interrupt, but I just went and checked that access for WebEx as well. And Doug's right, there's a number. It's a 667-84487. But it says the number is.
That's the passcode you need. Once you get that far,
Yeah.
you got to punch it in on your phone to get to the next step to join the meeting.
That's right. I feel like we've done this before. I'm having a bit of deja vu.
Okay, yeah. Okay, sorry, somebody was talking there before we got mixed up here a bit. Dixie, go ahead. Oh, can't hear you, Dixie.
Oh dear. No, Mr. Chair, do we need to vote on the amendments to this statement? Because
Yeah.
we already did accept this, but we
Yep.
have amended it.
Yeah, we should have a vote on that.
Thank
So-
you.
So I don't need a mover and seconder. I think Dixie moved it and Doug seconded it. Can't hear you, Doug. Can't hear you, Doug.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm back on. What are we actually, is for museums, is that what we're talking about? Okay, so that's what's in the package, just approving that to go in the presentation or the stuff that, yeah. Okay, I can second that.
Okay, thank you. Mandy?
Joan Vandermeer,
Yes.
Bill Furnell,
Yes.
Betty Lou Cole,
Yes,
Dixie Lee Arbuckle,
Yes.
David Wall,
Yes.
Doug Covenhoven,
Yes,
and Paul Heffer. So that carries 7-0.
Good. Okay, now Joel.
Okay, so now, are we okay?
Yes, go ahead, your floor.
Okay, I thought I said, so I thought I heard someone say, hold on. Under volunteer management, Dixie Lee and I have gathered a lot of resource materials. We do need the volunteers policy, the volunteer manual from the North Huron Museum, which Vicki had said she would get for us. And you will notice there's a lot of lines here marked PAC, which is, to me, and I think Dixie Lee will back me up on this one, under the volunteer management, we are not willing to go ahead and revise the whole manual and do all of that work until council has approved the reopening of the museum. I mean, we're talking hours of work, and I'm certainly willing to do it, but it doesn't make sense for me for us to do it ahead of knowing whether the museum is reopening or not.
Okay, thank you. Vicki, want to talk, please?
Thank you, your chairman. Just in addition to what Joan said, she and I did have a conversation about this, and I don't think that council's looking for the committee to establish or to rewrite that policy. I think basically in the proposal, they would, want to hear that, a policy would need to be developed and, to address, and I can forward some information on to Joan or Dixie Lee or whoever, but, recruitment and screening of candidates and, how you're going to recognize them and that job descriptions, just more of a overview of what the policy would include. And I think that should suffice without having to make any having to go and rewrite the policy or make changes to the existing policy, but just speak to it.
Okay. So not change policy, just speak to it then, right?
Okay, I think actually we're looking at two different things. We were talking about the actual, hold on a sec, sorry, my computer said it was picking up a lot of background noise. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can now, yes.
Okay. So we weren't thinking policy there specifically. We were looking at the manual, which is outdated and needs to be brought up to speed. So I guess there's two things. There's the manual itself and there is the policy.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, we can provide the policy that exists, it previously existed or exists now, but for the committee, I misunderstood. I think I thought you were going to revamp that policy, and I was saying you don't really need to do that unless it's approved. But I think in the proposal, there has to be, mentioned in there that, there would be policies in place to guide the oversee or guide the area of volunteer recruitment and retainment and recognition. Recruiting, retaining, and recognizing volunteers.
Vicky, if you can send that to Dixie Lee and I, we will come up with a statement.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
So then moving down into planning programs, opening the museum, summer weekends, student grant applications, like none of that can really be done ahead of time. We can say, I mean, if they have appropriate staff, then you could apply for student grants, but all those things around staffing and hours, until you know whether you're opening or not, or what kind of staff you have, you really can't. It would be a guessing game.
Yes, understandably. Any other input on that? Anybody on the committee?
You know what? I totally messed up. Under the staffing and hours, the volunteer management, that's the stuff to do with the staff managing the volunteers. The other parts that we already spoke about is under the volunteer program. Sorry. I put the cart ahead of the horse. So actually, if you look at under the volunteer program, it says review and update volunteer manual. So we've already discussed that. But all of those other things under staffing and hours, until you have a staff in a museum that you're opening, those things, like I said, it's just a guessing game. And then a volunteer appreciation plan also, Dixie Lee and I believe I am saying okay, we would come up with some kind of volunteer appreciation plan. And if you're, just so you know, I have years of experience in not-for-profits with volunteer programs, and have a lot of experience writing policies and manuals and things like that. So I would like council to be assured that we have the expertise between the two of us to do it.
Much appreciated, Joan. Doug, question? Can't hear you, Doug.
I have two screens and my mouse gets locked on the other screen once in a while. The one thing about just staff and hours is we did build into the budget, the North Huron Museum operating budget, to have staff for how many hours a week were we asking for in the budget?
8.
Is it 8 hours? Yeah. So we do need to state that, because the council needs to recognize that it'll come out in the operating budget, but when it comes to that section there, staff and hours, we are looking for 8 hours of staffing in our proposal, correct? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for Joan about, Vicky, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, then in terms of the hours of work, that's just on the work days, the weekdays.
Correct.
And so on the weekends, we had discussed this before, that there would need to be some kind of a supervision for those students or volunteers, depending on which way we go down that path. So I think that in the proposal, it needs to state that, you know, yes, there's 8 hours of staff time that's required during the week, which will be supplemented by volunteer hours, you know, whether it's 4 hours a day or, you know, something like that. But then on the weekend, I think you need to address that the volunteers, you know, the museum would be open. I'm just going to make this up and say from 12 till 4 on Saturday and 12 to 4 on Sunday, and will be staffed by volunteers. I think you need to spell that out in the actual proposal. And it's whatever the committee decides. It could be 8 to 4, it could be whatever, but I just think that needs to be, you know, kind of what your vision is. And if the first year it's no weekends, that's fine. But if it is that on the weekend, say, and even during the summer, that it would be, you just need to spell it out so council can see the vision of what you're trying to do. And then if over, you know, say you have like the first 2 years and you're just proposing that, you know, these are the hours. And if there is something that says by year 5, you know, we're hoping to be open, I don't know, on the weekends from 8 till 5 or something like that, you could put that in there. But you do have to kind of give them some kind of vision of what it is, or the operational hours of what they should see.
Okay. Thank you, Vicky. I thought I saw Bill's and Doug's hand maybe move there, or am I wrong? No? Okay. So any other comments about what Vicky just stated? None? Okay. Oh, sorry, Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want us to get all tripped up over the whole hours thing, right? Like the weekend, it's going to be whatever we can get volunteers for, and it's going to be what's practical. We're not going to be open Saturdays in the winter in January and February. Like, let's, you know, it's got to be during tourist season, and it's based on the availability of volunteers to staff it, to cover it off. So if we have lots of volunteers, we can stay open, you know, part of the day on a Saturday and part of a Sunday, fine. But if we can't, we can't. So I just don't want us to keep on getting tripped up over this whole volunteer weekend thing business.
And that wasn't my intent, Doug. It was just, I think, you know, we have these budgets in place and things. It was just more to describe in the actual written part of the proposal as to what we see happening. Just making sure that that's captured.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Anything else that you want to? Okay, Bill, go ahead.
So what committee members, we need to add something about weekends, a proposal for weekends in our presentation on museum hours, correct? And then who is doing that?
Yeah, I think as part of your proposal, you've got to say that, you know, I'm going to just use year 1 as an example, that you would, you know, you plan for it to be open, you know, Monday to Friday from, again, 12 to 4. I'm just making things up as we go here, but you have to kind of specify what you're envisioning and things like that. If you're not envisioning weekend, and you can even say weekends subject to availability of volunteers. But
I like that.
Yeah, just something to kind of show them that, you know, you know, this is what you see happening. And then it could be, you know, if you only want to deal with 1 year, that's fine. If you want to deal with 3 years, or how you see it growing, I mean, it's totally up to you. But I just recommend that you put something in the body of that proposal that says, you know, we see it open, you know, Monday to Friday from this time to this time, Saturday and Sunday, subject to the availability of volunteers. But
Thank
just
you.
so they can see what you're like visually, like in their mind, think about how when it's gonna be open, how it's gonna operate, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Now we had Lou and then Dixie Lee. Okay, go ahead, Lou. You're on mute, Lou.
Sorry. As a group of committee people, I think Doug is being cautious about volunteers, but I would be cautious about programming. Because I don't think, I mean, it seems to me that the fundamental place of a museum is that weekend days may be the very most popular of tourist people and people who are families who you are encouraging to come to the community to live because of cultural awareness and cultural opportunities. And if you're putting in something as Vicky has suggested, I think it should take into account some of that awareness that those days can be your most popular days. And I think we shouldn't trap ourselves into thinking that Monday till Friday is enough. And I just think we should be a little bit more aware of the bigger picture of what a museum is supposed to be.
Thank you, Lou. Dixie?
I agree with both Doug and Lou. I think to add on to what Doug said, we should have some way of saying, adding in seasonal variability and accommodating special events in terms of opening times.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, that everyone fine with that? If that gets sort of mentioned in that, Bill's got it marked down, I see. You're all right with that too? Oh, sorry, Joan, go ahead.
I just have a comment about the hours. Most museums are traditionally closed on Mondays and open on the weekends. And I think if we miss being open on weekends, at least one day initially, that I totally agree with what Lou has to say, that we're kind of missing a point.
Yeah, for those Saturday trips, yeah. Okay, so you're fine with that, gentlemen? You two, they're, yeah. Okay, anything else that you want to add to this at all? Sounds good, Vicky? Okay, so Joan, did you have any more you wanted to come there?
Nope.
That's got you, okay. Now I lose my sheets, I get them all mixed up, sorry, okay. Now, okay, it's all right that we move on to 7.2.
Paul?
Oh, sorry, yes?
Excuse me, just before we leave that list, we should point out that the item on museum governance, which was submitted to the committee March 2nd, 2020 and approved, has also been tweaked a little bit, just for clarity.
Oh, back. Okay. We don't have to do anything with that, Amanda, do we?
Paul, we're only partway down the list.
Oh, okay, good, okay. Go ahead, Joan.
Okay.
So what, I missed that. What one was revised?
No, we were only partway down the list, so we hadn't gotten to it yet.
Okay.
So if we're continuing on the list, the cost of the building and grounds maintenance and utilities is included in the budget. The museum income through admissions is included in the operations budget. The oversight of the museum once operational, that's things that Lou and Dixie Lee were working on. Am I correct, Dixie Lee?
Yes.
Yes, so if you two want to speak to that.
Well, for clarity, we felt that under the recommendation, we added the phrase reporting to council. So a board of management reporting to council, which just clarifies there. and consisting of 6 to 9 members of the community plus 1 council member should be established, and so on. And the board's mandate clearly defined by council. And then again, for clarification, we added the last sentence. Staff reporting regularly to the board will manage the day-to-day operations, including overseeing volunteers. And then for further refinement of all aspects of a board of management to oversee the museum will be developed after council's decision to move forward on the proposal to move and reopen the museum. And, you know, kind of like the volunteer piece, once approved, Lou and I and anyone else who wanted to help would be willing to further our research, which we've already started, and you know, come up with something to help.
Okay, thank you. Lou, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I appreciate very much the minor changes that have been included there. And I mean, I'm a strong believer in making sure it says after council's decision, because there's so much of this that can't happen on until we know we're going to walk up the street with the artifacts in our hands.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Joan. Or is it still Dixie? Sorry.
Dixie Lee, were you going to ask for a motion to accept that change in that governance?
I think we need to, because we had already accepted it, and with the clarifications, it's a stronger statement and a clearer one. So yes.
So Dixie, do I have a seconder on that? Dixie moved it. Bill, second, go ahead. Amanda?
Sorry, I was trying to help Verna get on. Who moved and seconded that?
Oh, Dixie and Bill second.
Has left the meeting.
Okay, Joan Vandermeer,
Yes.
Bill Farnell,
Yes.
Betty Lou Cole, Dixie Lee Arbuckle,
Yes.
David Wall,
You muted, Dave. You're muted, Dave.
Yes.
thanks Dave, and Paul Heffer.
Yes.
Perfect, so that carries 7-0.
Okay. Okay, Joan.
So moving on then, under the museum promotions and programs, Bill was going to speak to that.
I think that the 2 pages that were approved at last meeting that I didn't attend, I'm hoping are enough to give a general idea of what the possibilities are. But once again, a lot of it depends on the council's decision. As soon as the decision is made, you got a group of teachers here who could do a lot of programming quickly. Seriously, so it'll be fairly straightforward once we have approval. How's that?
Thanks, Bill. Did anybody have any questions for Bill? No. Okay, moving on, the operating budget. We've already done that, and the membership fees I put it into an Excel spreadsheet, so you have a copy of that. And No, the fee schedule. Yeah, the membership fees are in the operations budget. The fee schedule is attached to your agenda plan. And then going down under the fundraising plan, I think we are talking about fundraising later in the agenda, aren't we? Yes. So these are things that are like we haven't established. Doug and Dixie Lee and I are fundraising committee, and we haven't met yet. We have had some conversations by email, but we can talk more about that when we get to the agenda. So I would say the goal is something that we need to come up with. And I am currently researching fundraising. Like I'm researching funders and grantors. And yesterday I attended a webinar hosted by the Huron, Perth, Waterloo, and Wellington Regional Business Support. No, that's what it was for Huron, Perth, Waterloo, and Wellington Regional Business Support Seminar. It was hosted by Lisa McLeod, Minister of Heritage, Sports, Tourism, and Culture. And there are some funding avenues coming up that we may be able to tap into, one specifically with Trillium, and there's a number of small business supports also, and then there's also through the Arts Council, but I think that's more for theaters. I forwarded the information from that webinar to Vicki and Dixie Lee and Doug, so they will have it. So I think I am done the checklist. Thank you for bearing with me, and thank you, Bill and Dixie Lee, for all your hard work on us being able to pull this together.
Well, I want to thank you too. Very well done. Okay, so any other questions for Joan before she turns off her mic? Everybody's happy? Oh, I love that. Great. Okay, now we're going on to number 7.2. And that is Bill, Dave, Lou, and Joan.
Okay, that was Bill and I met a while back, and we met together in the youth center, and we sat down and compared notes and talked about things. The one thing that we decided that we needed to clarify was the expectations of council for the presentation. We could get up there and talk through the entire work plan and spend an hour or two showing all the details of what we've worked on to council. But I thought if their expectation is like 5 minutes, we're on two totally different pages. We better get that straight. So Bill and I agreed on that. And I called up Bernie Bailey, the Reeve, and I also spoke to Trevor Sipe, the other Wingham Ward rep that I knew, and he also serves on the BI, so I know him fairly well. And of course, our wonderful chairman here, Paul. And so spoke with them, and basically Bernie said, 10 minutes tops, and you better grab them in the first 3 minutes. so obviously, we, and then Trevor, he said, well, you're a committee of council, so, most delegations are only allowed 10 minutes, but since you're a committee of council, you can go longer. But he also said 10, 15 minutes, you've got to give us the high view overview of this thing, and don't bore us with all kinds of details. All the details can be in the PDF that you provide to council, and they have a chance to read that beforehand. And so make the basic presentation, the basic points and the selling points of the museum in your presentation to council. That's Bill and myself when we make that presentation, and then we can open up to questions. And if they've read through the material, they may have very specific questions about the things that we can hopefully just point to and say, well, that's in, appendix such and such, or that's under that part of the report. So that's really what council's expectation is, something between 10 and 15 minutes. And just hit the main bullets of what's needed. So I have started to put together basically kind of like a book with a table of contents. So a nice cover page that's, the picture of the train station, and then taking all the bits of what we as what's our work plan and putting it all into a nice readable kind of a book. And then a lot of the supporting documents can be like Appendix A, Appendix B, Appendix C. So that's the track that we're on right now. So then really the presentation at council, if it's going to be by Zoom, it'll be, a screen share. And I think that'll be kind of a PowerPoint presentation where it says slides and some talk, but not going into all kinds of intricate details on this plan. I think from the stuff I've looked at, like the stuff that Bill and Dixie Lee and who else was that prepared that Joan, the vision and mission and goals and all the positive things about the museum. And we have to remember also that the tourist information is part of the strategic plan in place with North Huron. So we just bring those points across, here's what it is, here's how we see it running. This is the cost, but here's why it's worth it. And we assure you that, we'll raise the money to get the whole thing prepared and moved over there. We're only asking for the commitment for the annual operating expenses. We assure you that we're only looking at a staff person for this, and we're going to be with volunteers. Here's how it's going to be managed by a board. So just give them the basic high-level information, and there would not be, I don't think it'd be realistic to expect a decision at that meeting. I think it would be received for information, and they would deliberate and think about it for at least the 2 weeks or till the next council meeting, and at which time then there could be further discussion and a vote as to whether or not to support this recommendation from our committee. So that's where we're at. Bill, have I kind of hit that right, or anything to add there, Bill?
Yes, I think that's an appropriate approach. I'm wondering too, I wanted to thank Joan for creating, this will help Doug and I, input from you folk, is the North Huron Museum the presentation to council checklist, which I think was in the package that Amanda sent out. So if there's any questions that you have for that, I think Doug and I will review it probably more, but if you have any questions about that, if you want to take a look at that now, Joan or I or Dixie will be available to answer them. Joan.
Yes, go ahead, Joan.
Thank you. Because we're not able to have a gallery meeting where we have supporters in the gallery, I would like to suggest that we ask for letters of support from interested parties that would be willing to stand up and say, yes, we support the museum. And I have on that checklist a number of different organizations that maybe we could ask. I would also like to know if anyone can think of other places we should be approaching, but I'm suggesting that we get a letter of support from the Alice Munro Festival. That's a natural partnership. The Legion, also a possible partnership. Huron County Tourism. Now, I was talking to Rick Sickinger. He's the acting officer for tourism right now. And they're in a bit of an awkward situation because they're worked for the county and we are a committee of the municipality. He and Elizabeth French Gibson might be able to come up with a tactfully worded statement in support of a museum if we feel that is appropriate to ask them. But we could be putting them in a bit of a difficult situation. So it would be nice to have their support. I mean, we know we have it, but I don't know if they can put it in writing. Doug, I was wondering if the BIA would.
Go ahead, Doug. You're on mute, Doug.
I saw that recommendation and I said to Bill, that is absolutely fantastic. And I think it's really critical. Super idea. So we can add to that the Wingham Community Connectors, the Wingham BIA, the North Huron Ec Dev Committee. So the more letters of support that we have, and I would say we try to get them and have them in the appendice at the, in our document, our big huge PDF that we produce. But yeah, for sure. And there are plenty of citizens that will come forward that are willing to speak in support of it. We saw that when we started this whole thing, when we had 50 people show up for a meeting to in support of the museum. They're entitled to speak 2 minutes at the beginning of a meeting, of any council meeting. So you could have, 10 people lined up to talk for 20 minutes in support. Well, let's get a minute apiece, but just to talk to support. So because the council does need to hear that. So I think that's part of the strategy. Either if we're still on Zoom, I'm really hoping that we would be able to have an in-person meeting if we see the lockdown coming off. And we're targeting for April. And if we see that it looks like it might open by May, then we might just delay our report till the in-person meeting would be available in the theater. But we'll have to cross the bridge as we go. Oh, Vicki?
Hey, Vicki.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment a little bit on this. Joan had talked to me about this, and I thought it was a great idea. When you normally do a funding proposal to, a organization, like Trillium or the government, or even a private organization and things for funding, they usually do want letters of support. So when I spoke to Joan, I thought, this is a great idea. Yeah, I think you need the committee's direction on this. But the clerk did review the agenda for today and the resolution or recommendation that's come forth, and he did indicate that wasn't part of the mandate for the committee. The committee was to develop the proposals as outlined and things. So just bring that to your attention, conveyed to myself and Mandy and things. But I'll leave it at that and let the committee decide what they want to do.
Lou's hand up and then I'll go to Joan. Go ahead, Lou. You're muted, Lou.
That's a fantastic idea, but I wouldn't let it drop away unless Vicki says, no, we could not. Even if people cannot appear, I would be asking every group you mentioned to make 1 or 2 sentence support letter that could be included in the package that Doug and Bill will put together for presentation. Like, I'm thinking of your art group, your library. I'm sure that those people would have every reason to say the impact that they feel when people come to visit Wingham from the fact that here is another place to visit. And I think this should be followed up as completely as possible within, as Vicky says, the laws and rules of the municipality. And I'd be giving it to council from the beginning. If they're going to go home and sit in a chair and read this stuff, have them read everything that could be possible given at the beginning.
Thank you, Lou. Okay, Joan had her hand up.
Okay, Vicky, I hear what you're saying about if you're writing a funding proposal, you get letters of support that say, you know, so-and-so is going to support it by doing this thing, giving money or in kind, something like that. That is not the intent of these letters of support. It would be just to, because we don't, if we have to present online, there's only us. There's 8 of us, even if there's that, who are saying, yeah, we really, really passionately believe there should be a museum and this needs to happen. But that's just us. And I would like that we would be able to show that there is support in the community. There is support amongst other groups, that the museum is a viable entity and there is support in the community from it, and not stepping on anybody's toes.
Thank you, Joan. Now, Vicky?
And just so I'm clear, like, Joan, that's exactly what I was anticipating you doing. And I thought that's what you were looking for, is just letters of support for it and things. I just used that as an example. I mean, we did recently submitted an application to the government for something, and we had contacted Morris Turnberry for a letter of support. And they're not contributing anything. They just were indicating that they were supportive of our application and how they thought it played an important role in recreation for our community and their community. So, you know, it depends on, you know, sometimes it's letter of support stating from somebody that they're going to provide in-kind assistance or financial assistance or anything like that. But sometimes it is just simply saying, you know, we support this initiative, or we see the benefit of this, or whatever, and things. And we weren't, the discussion wasn't that it couldn't be done, or it couldn't be submitted, or that the township was saying no or anything like that. It was just simply that this goes a bit out of the mandate. Wasn't listed as something in the proposal, but it didn't say that it couldn't be done. It's just a comment that was made. So I'm just passing on the comment for the community to consider when making their decision as to whether or not to include it.
Thank you, Vicky. And Doug, I think I saw your hand, or is that wrong? Yeah, go ahead.
I unmuted first. So what I would propose then is that really Bill and I work toward assembling this document, and then we email it to the entire committee, not waiting till the next meeting. But this is a working document that we want input from everybody on the committee to build this thing together. So that's, I think it's just, I understand what we want to have, and I kind of explain it to you, that it's like, this is like the book, you know, with the table of contents in the front, you can find all the work committee stuff, but the front end of it reads, you know, kind of clean and neat, reads like a book. And you can then take a section and go look at the back to find the details of it, right? So we say the operating cost of the museum is going to be $48,150 per year. Details you can find under Appendix B. You know, the cost of music, you know, the moving the museum, you know, there's 2 choices. You're going to deaccession everything and it's going to cost this much, or we're going to move it and it's going to cost this much. The difference is the difference between the 2 costs is what the committee has added into their fundraising costs. That kind of a thing, So if you kind of empower Bill and I to pull and do that together, but everybody, we send it out and we just keep revising it until we all feel pretty happy with it. And hopefully that'll be at our next meeting then, that we would be at that stage for our May 11th meeting to just really take a good look through it.
You're muted, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Vicky.
Yeah. And just commenting further on what Doug is suggesting then is if the committee did decide to pursue those letters of support, it would be included in the appendices of the document. I think that's what you're getting at, right, Doug? And things is that it would be, yeah.
Yeah, it'd all be there.
Okay. Were there any other questions? Or go ahead, Bill. You're still muted, Bill. Oh, still muted.
So
Muted.
should be at the bottom of your screen, Bill, a little mute button. I'll run around to help you.
Oh, you're same spot. Okay.
Yeah.
He's coming, Bill.
I think Bill's in the youth center. Is that right, Bill?
Yeah.
So just while Doug's run out there, I have a quick question on, are we going to ask for are we going to go ahead with that idea or no?
Well, I'll ask when they all get on. I'll ask.
Thank you.
You have to tap behind it.
Here you go. I mean, you touch one thing wrong and kaboo.
Okay,
You
Bill,
hear
I
me?
have a question here first, and then we'll go to Joan.
Okay. I just mentioned that I'm in support of receiving letters of support on just the idea of the need for a community museum, and that we need to remember, if we decide to do this and make it part of our presentation, and the letters are in the package, we'll have to have at least a month, perhaps more time for letters to be, for groups to be approached, and then letters of support to be funneled into our documents. So we need to consider that too. Just a comment.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, Joan had a comment here, please.
In regards to the letters of support, like there's a number of them listed there, and I know certain people have certain connections, and I'm just wondering who would be willing. I could draft a generic template for a letter of support, because often when you ask people for a letter of support, they say, what do you want us to say? Can you give me an example? So if we have a template that they can use and people are willing to approach certain individuals, that could move it along a lot quicker. And I agree with Bill. I think we need probably a 4 to 6 week turnaround window to receive things back in.
Okay. So any other comment about that? Oh, Dixie, go ahead.
I can't seem to find a list Joan seems to be referring to. It maybe it's something I failed to print.
Oh, you mean a list of the different EIAs and whatnot?
I mean, a list of suggested contacts we could ask for a letter of support.
Dixie Lee, it's on the presentation to council chapter, it's at the bottom.
Yeah.
Page 18.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Doug.
I think we can work out the details in that list between the meeting. That the agreement here is that we go ahead and get after it. And I agree with Joan. Having a template is great. Different ones of us have connections with different committees and stuff like that. So I think we can work that out. It's just we have the agreement that let's do it.
Yes. So we need anything for that, Amanda, or we just, okay, if you could read?
Yep, so the motion here that I have is that the North Huron Museum Committee hereby agrees to obtain letters of support from community groups regarding the relocation of a community museum to the train station, and further that the letters of support be incorporated in the final presentation to council.
I think Joan moved it, and I think Bill, do you have a seconder? I think it was Bill, okay?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Amanda.
Joan Vandermeer,
Yes.
Bill Farnell, Betty Lou Cole,
Yes.
Dixie Lee Arbuckle,
Yes.
David Wall,
Yes.
Doug Kyvenhoven,
Yes.
and Paul Heffer.
Yes.
Okay, that carries 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Okay, was there any, Joan, go ahead.
Bill, were you going to bring up the request for staff support, or do you want me to?
I was going to mention, by all means, you go ahead and do that. I was going to mention that I created a list of advantages for the train station location, and that's in your package too. If anybody has any other suggestions or positives that I missed or the committee missed, the three of us, please let me know. Do you want them read, or or can you just look them over?
That's on page 16. I think you hit a lot of the stuff there, just great.
I'd like to take this part of the package to council, or a presentation to council, or whatever.
Agree. Anybody else? Any other questions to Bill? Or if not, can drop him an email if anything that you think isn't on there. Okay, Joan, were you?
Okay, actually two things. I looked at the flow chart that was presented early on in the meetings of the different options that council had, and I broke it down to kind of where we're at now. So it's just that page, museum program options for municipal council, and the steps to relocate the meeting and the steps to discontinue the program. That's just something that I think makes it really, really clear. This is what you're looking at. And the other is a request for North Huron staff support. Read the North Huron Museum Committee. And in the presentation to council, if staff could prepare either, depending what Doug and Bill decide they want, a virtual tour video of the current museum and the train station to give council a visual of both sites. I mean, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? And in lieu of video presentation, provide the committee with photos that they can use for the presentation.
Right. And that's go ahead, and that will be going out on everything. Right? When you make for the agenda, like that'll be all involved, like the pictures, so they all can have any questions. They'll be able to look at that, I'm sure, right? Go ahead, Doug, you had your hand up.
Yeah, we don't have time to show a video in that presentation. That would be too long. And it'd have to be really well done, or it just won't do it. I have photos, lots of photos of the train station and I've already started putting those into the book. I think, Joan, I think that'll be sufficient. It really, if we have good photos of the museum, I believe that we're really trying to sell the future. We don't need to dwell too much in the past. We know that building's going to cost $3 million to fix, and so I really think we should just focus on the train station and try to keep our presentation down. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Bill, you had your hand up.
Yeah, the comment, Doug, I wanted to make too was that I don't know how many council members have even seen our old museum, and I'd like to find that out.
Go ahead, Vicky.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, they have all been on a tour through the museum. When they came on board, it was part of their onboarding orientation for council.
Thanks, Vicki. That helps a lot. Thanks.
So
Go ahead, Joan.
just a quick question to Bill and Doug then. Do you need any video, any pictures from the museum of anything that's like, here's what's really important, like just the visuals of some of the displays? Up to you guys, obviously, but I know that we probably wouldn't be allowed in if you need pictures and things, and Vicki could authorize somebody to go in.
Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, we can get in. Denise has been my lady that's let me into the museum a few times around Christmas. So I'm sure, Vicki, that'd be, if we needed pictures, we could just contact you and get somebody to let us in.
That's correct. Through you, Mr. Chairman. That's correct. And if you did require some pictures or something, or needed some assistance, I've already talked to Denise about providing that assistance, and I can authorize that.
Yeah. Thank you. Bill, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to add more. I'm thinking about this. The only reason you may want a picture or two of the old museum is simply that you have a traditional 1970s, 1980s museum. And that was, you put static displays into a building and people toured it with the occasional special event. Whereas what we're doing at the train station is a whole different view. There will be few static permanent displays. Yes, there will be some, but the object is to become more innovative and more the vision of museums in the last 10 years.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Any other, excuse me, any other talk on that? Okay, Vicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think Bill has touched on a point there that's important, because I think what council wants to see is how this will be different. So I'm sure if you go 5 minutes over, it's not going to be a huge deal or something like that. If you go 20 or 25 even, but but you have to, somehow you've got to be able to convey your vision to council, and kind of like, this is, you really hit the nail on the head there, Bill. This is a 1970s type museum. This is, 2021 or 22. This is what the vision is, and this is how it would look and how we would operate it. It's different and things. And I think that would be part of, that getting that point across to council.
Yeah, I agree that message has to come through somewhere in your presentation. Dixie, did you have your hand up? I thought I saw a movement somewhere here. Oh, sorry, Luke, go ahead.
Just further to what Bill is saying, and Vicki is underscoring, this museum, if it was well organized and well run, would be much more interactive with the whole community. And that's why I think the tying in with various groups in the community for their support would mean that became part of the programming. And I think that it'll take a while to sell that to the community, but I think that is going to be the overall and underlying way that the programming is going to take place.
Thank you. Dixie?
This ties into some of the things I pulled together for the economic impact report. Things like, the museum adds value by creating digitally worldwide or province-wide, countrywide recognition. And through that digital exposure, you're also, you're going to have changing activities, interactive activities, and you're going to have links to local businesses. So somehow, when we're talking about the new vision, we need to be sure to underline that that's a really major part of what a new museum will comprise.
Thank you, Dixie Lee. Okay, any other comments on this portion? Okay, go ahead, Joan, or was it Bill?
I had suggest, I didn't know whether we needed a request to council for support, but Vicky's saying we have support, so I'm going to withdraw that then.
Thank you. Okay. So are we have anything more on that you want to do in there, Joan? Go ahead, Joan.
If you look at I'm just bringing you back to something that I caught myself up on, the presentation to council checklist, and it's also on the work plan checklist. I have wrong figures on 2 lines. So if you could, your budget for relocating the current museum should be $177,250.
Yes.
And the budget for deaccessioning should be $139,175. So I just like to correct those little oversights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on that, folks? Oh, go ahead, Amanda.
Just that it was amended. I believe we had a motion before to accept it, so we just have to accept the revised budget then.
Okay. Go ahead, Joan. I can't hear you.
Talking to myself here. It was accepted before, Amanda. I just grabbed a wrong, an old piece of paper when I was filling in things instead of looking at what I had most recently done. So that's how that happened. So
Okay.
those figures that I just gave you, those budgets were accepted.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so Paul, can we accept, or can we get a motion to accept the revised museum budget?
Accept. Okay. Joan is a mover. Do I have a seconder? Lou? Yours, Dixie? Or I'm sorry, Amanda?
All right, Bill Farnell?
Just a minute, you're Mr. Chairman. I think Joan's trying to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're off, Joan. Joan, can't hear you.
Yep. The budget figures that I gave you to fix on the form, on the checklist, were old numbers. You already approved the 139,175 and the 177,250. They were approved
Oh,
before
okay.
in another meeting. Okay.
Misunderstood that. Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
No, I just got my numbers mixed.
Okay.
Okay. Is there more with the 7.21? Seeing none. Okay. Let's move on to point 3. Go ahead, Doug, Dixie Lee, and Joan.
think that, do we give that to you, Joan, or Dixie Lee?
Just trying to find my piece of paper here. So for the this is the fundraising part we're speaking about, right? We have not met yet. We have exchanged information via email. We will come up with a fundraising total. I'm wondering what council is expecting in the way of a statement around fundraising ahead of any approval that we're going ahead, because my dilemma is, yes, I can research all kinds of institutions and funders that would be possible sources of money, but I can't approach them saying, oh, we might reopen the museum, and would, you know, all I can do is make a list. And I think Doug's kind of in the same situation with approaching people for in-kind donations and for cash donations. If you don't even know whether we're going ahead, it's really difficult to nail people down.
Right, understand. Right, go ahead, Doug, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I actually spoke specifically about this with Bernie Bailey, and he was in agreement. Like I said, yeah, council is not forced to. I mean, the decision they make is conditional on us raising the funds anyway. So there's really no risk to council. So all they need is like, yeah, okay, we're going to raise so much money from grant. We're going to raise this much money. The committee is committed to raising this much money. And we expect it to be, and even if it's like, here's a bunch of the, like if Joan had a list of a bunch of the potential grant organizations, and then we said, and the rest would be raised through, you know, business and individual donations from the community and you know, various companies around, that's going to be good enough. They're not expecting us to give an itemized list of how much we're going to raise from all different people.
Mm-hmm. Right, thank you. So is there any more talk on that then? That's pretty well covers that, right? Okay, and then oh, Joan, you had your hand?
I think it covers that. Doug and Dixie Lee and I just need to set a time to discuss what we're going to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So no more discussion on that then. So we go to correspondence. There's none. And then number 9, the next steps are the fundraising plan, which they're going to be working on by Doug, Joan, and Dixie Lee. And then the draft presentation by Mr. Farnell, Kyvenhoven, and Lou and Joan. Any discussion? Go ahead. Go ahead, Amanda. I'll go with you first.
I'm just wondering who's going to be working on the letters of support, gathering those.
Oh, right. Okay, Doug, did you have your hand? Yes.
Well, I think we agreed that we're all going to get working at it, whoever's got whatever connection. So you could just say the committee will work on the letters of support. It's part of the draft presentation. I'm thinking the draft presentation, really, we've got the 4 names there, but really it's the whole committee going forward. Bill and myself, and I think the huge is going to be Joan. So I think the 3 of us are going to be kind of the assemblers of the document, and we'll just keep on recycling it back to the committee for input on all the areas where they have their special expertise. And so everybody's going to be involved with this thing, but I can be the guy that's doing the word processing document with the table and the appendixes and stuff like that. Joan's already provided, you know, most of the content. It's just getting it in kind of a nice, presentable, readable form for the for the document that goes. And then as those letters of support come in, that we'll be adding them in as well into the document. So over the course of the next month, but as Bill said, it's going to take longer than a month for those letters to come through. So I think realistically, we are looking at finishing this document by an April meeting and presenting in May. Am I sounding like reasonable there?
That's sort of looking by the timeline. Bill, you had something to say there?
Yes. Am I muted?
No, you're perfect.
Oh, good. Might I suggest that, Joan, if you create your template letter and either circulate that at our next meeting or whatever. I mean, for example, I know a couple of chairs of committees, I know Doug does, and we might be able to say, well, I'll look, an example, I'll look after the horticulture, or Verna would look after the horticultural society. I'll take on these 2 or 3 contacts letters. How's that sound? Does that sound like a plan?
Dixie Lee, go ahead.
I'm just thinking maybe we need one person to coordinate the contacts because, you know, we don't want 2 or 3 committee members calling the same person or the same body. So if we could have someone do that, and then every committee member, if you want to email that person and say, look, I can contact the following, and then the coordinator can say, well, someone else is already, so we just don't get a lot of overlap.
Okay, Dixie Lee, I think she put her name in as the coordinator. Is that fine with you? Like, no,
Did I just volunteer myself? Sure, that's fine.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you, Dixie Lee.
Dixie Lee, thanks. Okay.
And I would suggest that has to start happening right away because it does take time. For instance, the BIA, it has to go to the next BIA board meeting and they're only monthly. So if we waited to the next meeting to start this process, we ain't ever going to get done. So this should happen immediately after or as soon as possible after the meeting. That.
Yeah, Joan, you have a question?
I agree with Doug and Dixie Lee. I'm willing to support you with this if you and I can work together.
Perfect.
And I'll get the template done. I would like you to review it and maybe have somebody else with some editing skills review it. I'm thinking maybe Lou, and we can get on it. You can poke me and say, get moving.
Okay, thanks.
That's great because I know there's already a person mentioned at the last BIA meeting. They'd like to put a letter in for this. So having a template made up, that'll be just super. Okay, were there any other questions? Oh, Lou, go ahead.
I'm just saying, Joan, I will do what I can do. I feel so bad that I don't live up here these days. But I am very glad to be handed a job and say, go for it. I will do that.
Well, you're in my living room here now, Lou, so you're not too far away. Okay, were there any other discussion with that? That's looked after? Okay, the draft presentation, that's going, I think we've already mentioned that, have we not, for next? Okay, and scheduling of the next meeting, that the next museum committee meeting is scheduled for March 11th, 2021 at 2, probably the same way through electronic participation, unless notified otherwise. Adjournment, that the North Huron Museum Committee agree that there being no further business before the committee, the meeting be hereby adjourned at 3:41. Joan, mover, seconder.
I'll second it.
Okay, that I think that was Dave and Mandy, or should I say, is there any further discussion? Sorry, about anything? Okay, go ahead, Mandy.
Thanks, Paul. Betty Lou Call.
What am I supposed to be answering to?
If you agree to adjourn the meeting.
Yes.
Dixie Lee Arbuckle.
Yes.
David Wall.
Yes.
Doug Kivenhoven.
Yes.
Joan Vandermeer.
Yes.
Bill Farnell.
Yes.
And Paul Hefford.
Yes, and thank you for a great meeting, folks. Really appreciate that.
I just want to thank Doug Kivenhoven for keeping the pictures all on the walls in the room he's in. Thank you, Doug.